I'm happy to have with us again Senator George Borrello. So the senator, as you may know, was originally elected in 2009 to the Chautauqua County legislature. He served 4 times as a county legislator. Then in 2017, he was elected Chautauqua County executive. And then since 2019, he's been the state senator. So, George, welcome back.
It's good to be on with you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Good to be here in the studio live.
Well, yeah, you're here. That's I appreciate the trip. So there's a lot of things I want to cover today. But, give us some of the things that you think are important that we need to talk about, because there's so much going on here in terms of what just happened in the election, in terms of what we hope to happen next year in terms of the election, where Kathy Hochul stands, where Mandami is in New York City, the electric mandate being put on pause. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts there.
Well, absolutely. First of all, yes. I think what you're seeing is the Democrat Party, particularly here in New York State, has been taken over by a group of young, ignorant, inexperienced socialists, and they are the influencers now of the Democrat Party. So more than ever, the tail is wagging the dog in the Democrat Party, and unfortunately, the governor now has to capitulate. Right? But unfortunately, she's waffling back and forth. You mentioned she just voluntarily suspended the all-electric buildings mandate, which not only have we been calling for, but I've been predicting this for quite a while, that it's just not tenable.
I've been wondering how this could possibly go into effect. I mean, here in Western New York, we all know that we don't have the grid system for it, that the Builders Association totally against it, so many groups are totally against it. So many people would have died in a couple of years ago when we had this terrible storm here in Western New York. And the way it comes about, because I'm wondering how they're going to have the either the stop or the pause, the way it comes about is the state attorney general's office in the lawsuit decides to just pause it.
Well, look, so first and foremost, this was done voluntarily. I think that's important. The governor says her excuse is, well, we're going to wait for the outcome of this appeal. Well, when does that ever happen? There was no stay. You're an attorney,
right?
Yeah, there was no stay put in. She did this voluntarily.
It's a political move. There's 100%. Just no question about it.
And I hope that people of New York State aren't as stupid as she thinks they are. That's really the bottom line here. She has a record of pausing harmful things like this, only to hit play again after the election's over. And that's what's going to happen here. That's why my Republican colleagues, led by Senator Rob Ortt, our Republican leader in the Senate, have called upon the governor to call the state legislature back to Albany in an emergency session to officially undo the all-electric buildings mandate. The only way we're going to know that she's serious and understands the grave implications of this is for the all-electric building mandate to be repealed. And that's the only way to show this is just a blatantly political move.
You don't expect her to do that, though. Obviously.
Oh, no, there's a lot of things I don't expect her to do.
This woman puts her finger up in the air and decides where the political winds are blowing, and she's got to appease her downstate environmentalists that think this is something they need.
Well, there's a lot of things. First of all, yes, there are radical environmentalists that think that somehow we're going to save the planet by destroying New York's economy and, quite frankly, the environment. This would be very devastating on a number of levels. Look at the solar sprawl that's going out. They're popping up overnight like mushrooms across Western New York, eating up good farmland, negatively impacting our quality of life. Because it's not because of saving the planet. This is about making money. There are a lot of people making money on this all-electric buildings mandate and the growth of this irresponsible growth of so-called renewable energy. And those are the people that are really behind this, the people that are making money. But the dirty little secret is there's no profit without continuous, massive taxpayer subsidies.
That's exactly right. It's not sustainable on its own.
That's right.
It needs subsidies, government money handed to them.
And someone on Wall Street figured out a long time ago that you have this group of useful idiots that are willing to fight for you so you can make billions and billions of dollars in guaranteed profit. Guaranteed because it's taxpayer money. They figured out on Wall Street that we've got this army of people that are going to say this is how we're going to save the planet while we, suck up billions and billions of taxpayer dollars. And why risk your money in the market? Why risk your money in real estate investments and the stock market when you have the guaranteed return courtesy of the taxpayers? And that's what this is all about.
And so you've got people, these solar farms is what you're talking about. You've got these solar farms trying to go everywhere. Certainly a lot of municipalities are against it. So there's these battles that are going on. But they wouldn't survive on their own. That is the major focal point. They only survive because of governmental subsidies.
Period.
And, we have natural gas. We have a great supply of natural gas.
Yes, here in Western New York. And by the way, natural gas, the first natural gas well ever dug was in Fredonia, New York, right here in Western New York. So we are the birthplace of natural gas, my hometown of Fredonia. And we have an abundance of it. And that's without even doing any fracking. We have an abundance of it. If we fracked, it would be an economic boon like we've never seen before, particularly in Western New York and the southern tier. But yet we're not doing that. We're watching people literally, in some cases, a few yards away over the border in Pennsylvania that are tapping into the gas under our feet. And look at the boom it's done for the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, the guy that owns the Buffalo Bills owns the Buffalo Bills because he makes billions off fracking.
Fracking, right. Exactly right. And we have that availability to us. We have the natural resources here. We just, now for years, since Cuomo and, for years have put it aside to pander, again, to the environmentalists.
Absolutely. And the bottom line is New York's economy is suffering under this far-left rule. One-party Democrat rule in New York State has been an unmitigated disaster. And we have to break that cycle. And I don't care if you're a lifelong Democrat, like my parents, lifelong Democrats, but they didn't sign up for this. They didn't sign up for this violent socialism.
George, the ban on natural gas, was that passed as a law, or was that an executive order by Kathy Hochul?
So there's this all electric buildings mandate is the ban on natural gas in effect. So that was a law passed in the state legislature, and also probably the most damaging one was passed a few years prior, the CLCPA, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act in 2019. As soon as the Democrats took over the Senate, that was one of the first things that they did. That is where all of these harmful laws, regulations, all of these harmful policies stem from, including the all-electric buildings mandate. This idea that we are going to essentially shut down reliable forms of energy. And now New York is suffering for it. We've shut down natural gas-powered plants. We've shut down nuclear power. Indian Point was shut down. That was 20% of New York City's electrical supply. And the governor knows that she's been warned. She's been warned by the independent system operators that starting in 2026, we can have rolling blackouts in places like New York City and Long Island because of the lack of supply. So she's panicking. That's why she's talking about nuclear power. That's her Hail Mary pass that she's going to throw. I hope it connects. But the reality is we don't have... Nuclear takes a decade. Between regulations and building. And she just wants to say she's doing something.
And the electric companies are charging more money today.
Yes.
Because they have to ramp up, and they can't ramp up without funding. And so everybody's being billed those additional dollars for your electric bill because they're trying to ramp up.
That's right. With CLCPA is the reason why your electric bill is going up. Make no mistake about it, folks. It's not greedy corporations. I know that the governor and Democrats want to talk about greedy corporations. Just remember one thing. They do not have the ability to raise their rates on their own. That is done with the approval of the governor. She signs off on every rate increase. And in fact, the New York Power Authority, they just signed off on a 20% increase for double-digit increases for several suppliers in New York State unanimously. That unanimously they signed off on it. So that tells you that, and who signs off on it ultimately? The governor. So they know that the irresponsible mandates in the CLCPA are the reason why the electric bills have to go up, and she is putting her stamp of approval on every single increase. So when you open your bill, you can thank Democrats, the CLCPA, and Governor Kathy Hochul for how much pain they're causing.
Could a governor, new governor, do something by executive order to in any way encourage natural gas use in the state, or would it have to be a total repeal of the legislation?
Well, it can be both. First and foremost, yes, a Republican governor coming in, which I think we all hope is going to happen, can declare a state of emergency. for energy affordability, energy access. The fact that we don't have enough right now to supply the needs of New York State right now, let alone when we're shutting down more and more reliable sources of energy. So you declare a state of emergency, energy state of emergency, and then that would give the governor the authority to reverse some of these harmful decisions that have been made. But also, a Republican governor, as long as we can maintain the number and grow the number of members of the New York State Senate so that the Democrats don't regain their supermajority, that means a Republican governor will have the ability to override veto.
Veto.
They will not. Democrats will not be able to override vetoes.
Right. That's what we have to hope for. That's what we have to achieve, and we do have a very strong candidate to be able to do that in Elise.
Absolutely. Elise Stefanik, if you look at some of the polls already, here we are. She just announced, a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago, and we already have polls that show her within the margin of error. And I think that's the people of New York. Again, if you're a diehard Democrat or not affiliated, an independent voter, you should want to have balance restored in state government, and Elise Stefanik can do that.
Who do you think she might choose as a running mate in terms of lieutenant governor? Is any thought about George Borrello or somebody from Western New York?
Well, I think a common sense Western New Yorker would certainly be a good choice. I'm not saying myself. I'm just saying I think. Well, look, I have not heard any names floated out there, but strategically, honestly, being that she is from upstate, I would think someone with good name recognition downstate. From the 5 boroughs or from Long Island would certainly be a good choice. A lieutenant governor candidate is someone that can be out there, pounding the pavement and going places across the state, spreading the message, giving people hope that if we do this, we can restore New York State to the great state it once was.
So on that, Bruce Blakeman, I mean, he would seem to be the obvious choice, right?
Well, and I think Bruce is still kind of on his listening tour right now. I believe he was in Western New York recently.
Yeah.
Bruce is a fantastic guy.
He is.
He has been an amazing county executive, an amazing advocate. He has stood up against the far left in New York City, and he's told them your policies, your destructive policies, are not welcome in Nassau County. And so I think he's an amazing champion. He knows how to message. I mean, if you're asking me, like it's a fantasy football team, if I was going to put together, I'd certainly love to see Bruce Blakeman somehow involved.
Yeah, I see him getting involved. I certainly don't see him primarying, given that, we need to be together in this coming year's elections, so we can't fight amongst ourselves. We need to be together. I think Elise, with her... especially with the money that she's been able to acquire, she's got over $12 million, more than any Republican has had in 20-some, maybe 30-some years, to be able to run this race, to be able to compete with Hochul, who's got over $15 million and obviously can pull money out of the state. So I think we're in good shape for that. But let's still continue on with, with some of these mistakes that the state continues to make. The correction officers, yes. the Collins Correction Facility, the other closings. I want to move on to the correction officers. We've talked before about the fact that I've represented over 300 correction officers, and the battle in court continues. But now the state has done what it's said it was planning to do, closing prisons. The Collins facility, really putting half of that facility in storage. Mm-hmm. What's going on here?
Well, first of all, if closing prisons and downsizing our prison system was going to make New York safer and make our prisons safer, then New York should be the safest prison system in the nation, and it's not. It's among the worst. That's the bottom line. And this is just going to further exacerbate the problem. It's not about the number of employees per square foot of a prison. It's about the ratio of employees to inmates. And most importantly, it's about how the staff is treated. So you're going to take Collins, and you're going to close one half of it and move everybody into the other half. But also, this is not like shutting down a factory. That side that they're going to close houses some very important programs that reduce recidivism, address addiction issues. Where are those programs going to now be housed? So the bottom line is the governor has done a horrible job with our prison system. We still have to this day National Guard troops deployed in our prisons in New York State. I mean, people forget that right now. Right now the number of violent incidents in our prisons continues to escalate. It's at all-time highs. You've got huge amounts of contraband, drugs, weapons coming in, and the governor has absolutely failed miserably to keep the employees that she's sworn to protect safe. It's
George,
horrible.
could you just explain the Holt Act and why the Holt Act is so dangerous for people who are working in the prisons? They're literally, their lives are at stake right now.
Yeah, the HALT Act, H-A-L-T, it's a humane alternatives to long-term something. It's just a long-term incarceration. So this is something that was Democrats put in place, and it ties the hands of people inside the prison. First and foremost, just remember one thing. If you are in New York State prison, you have done some really bad things. Okay,
Yeah. You're in state prison.
Yeah, exactly.
You're in state prison.
Yes, this is not jail. This is not, you're talking about someone who is convicted of a violent felony in almost every case. That's who's behind bars. We don't put people in prison in New York State anymore. I mean,
Right.
That's why our numbers are so low.
Right.
So if you've done something and managed to get yourself into prison in New York State, you're a bad person. Okay, understand that first and foremost. And then people do bad things inside prison. They commit violent acts. They basically carry out gang justice. They extort money. But HALT stopped the use of isolation, of taking someone out of general population and putting what's called the SHU, the special housing unit. Some people call it solitary confinement. But let me tell you something. When people say solitary confinement, you think of some movie, where some person in a dark room all by themselves. But I've been in the special housing units, the SHU. There's outdoor space. You get special attention. You're by yourself in a comfortable room. I mean, honestly, it's nicer than most of the hotel rooms in Albany that I've been in.
But isn't there on the HALT Act that they're not allowed to inspect packages that come into the prison?
There's a number of criminal justice reforms, including that. That's a part of the reason why you've had these problems. We spent millions of dollars for body scanners, like you see at the airport, and then Democrats would not allow those body scanners to be used on people coming into the prisons, the visitors. Packages not being inspected, absolutely. Some horrible things happen too. We need to eliminate contact visits first and foremost. Okay, say, that's how horrible is that? Some person who's in prison can't hug their child. I'm like, well, if you're worried about hugging your child and being a good parent, here's an idea: don't commit crime. And you end up in prison. You have to worry about hugging your child when they come to visit you. Because when things like that happen, and you actually have people putting things like fentanyl and dangerous drugs onto the person of this little child, and then the person goes to the inmate, the criminal goes to hug that kid and pulls the drugs off their body as part of the process. That's one of the major ways contraband is getting inside of our prisons. They're using
And weapons
little kids.
too, am I correct?
Yeah, 100%. And and look, unfortunately, I'm a huge supporter of our military and the National Guard, but you have had 2 arrests right here in Western New York of National Guard members that have been arrested for bringing weapons and cell phones and things like that in and selling them to inmates.
Well, they're over their head. The National Guard
100%.
people are over their head. They're not trained for this. This isn't what they've signed up for. This isn't what they've been trained for. So when they put in these kinds of situations, it's just the wrong thing to do, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with. And by the way, it's costing tens of millions of dollars a month to have them. The governor wrings her hands about federal cuts, and then how horrible it is, and she goes after the president for cutting money, yet she's wasting hundreds of millions of dollars on having the National Guard in our prisons, while she simultaneously fired thousands of corrections officers. So
when all this first occurred and they were looking for contempt, they were looking for $3.5 million a day from these correction officers. $3.5 million a day. That's what they claimed it was costing them to put in the National Guard and to run these prisons when the strike first occurred. So yeah, she's wasting a tremendous amount of money. She's putting the burden on people who have no training to be in those prisons. Being a prison guard, I've learned in all of my research, and especially from John Violante, a PhD professor at the University of Buffalo, is a terrible, terrible job. The stress of that job is immense. They actually have the suicide rate twice that of police officers, correction officers do. They have post-traumatic stress. 29% of them have post-traumatic stress. I mean, it is just an extremely difficult job.
And the Democrats in charge and the governor had made it even more so. It was a difficult job before the so-called criminal justice.
Well, and then the 70% is the new 100%. So they were 70% staffed and working 12 hours, 16 hours, 18 hours, as much as 24, 36 hours in a row and mandated.
Yeah, imagine, I'm a small business owner, I'm an employer. Imagine if any private sector employer did to their employees what Kathy Hochul is doing to these corrections officers. Literally locking them inside, saying you can't go home for sometimes it's 32 hours straight, lack of sleep, putting them in dangerous situations, giving them not giving them the tools to be able to keep themselves safe. If a private employer did all those things, man, there'd be investigations, there'd be indictments. You'd be in prison yourself as a private business owner. But it's okay when Democrats and the governor do it.
I've talked to correction officers who have, after a 32-hour shift or even longer, have gotten their car, fallen asleep, and gotten into terrible car accidents, injured themselves because of it. Who can't go home to their families, who need them at different times. I talked to one correction officer, his wife was on chemotherapy and can't leave to go take care of your family because you're mandated to stay there.
Yeah, during the strike especially, again, just egregious violations of labor laws here in New York State. They were refusing medical excuses, telling people that are out on disability and medical leave that they have to come back in violation of doctor's orders. In some cases, you have people that were, like you said, they were receiving chemotherapy and other serious medical treatment and forced to come to work.
Right.
Again, imagine if a private sector employer did any of that. What would the Department of Labor do? What would the governor be? She'd be pounding the table, and here she is, doing it herself.
These are union employees,
yes,
and they're being treated allegedly by a pro-labor governor in an incredibly unsafe and unfair way.
Absolutely. The labor union that represents them is fed up. NYSCOBA, the corrections officers union, and let's not forget about the civilian employees that are suffering. I've heard some horrific stories of people that are in there that are teachers and nurses, other healthcare professionals. Just horrific things that they have been subject to as a result of the HALT Act and the inability to take violent people that commit violent acts inside prison and take them out of the general population. Just absolutely horrible what's going on. And let's not forget one thing. You've seen some pretty much silence on the part of the Democrats in the legislature on this, except for some laws that they've passed. But here's the dirty little secret: they want to be the first state to eliminate prisons in the country. That's the bottom line. You have a group that's called Communities Not Cages. Go to their website. This is not a joke. They are in Albany every week. Their About page says that their goal is to eliminate long-term incarceration in New York State. They want to eliminate prisons. They think rapists, pedophiles, murderers should be out on our streets with an ankle bracelet or something.
So they think that Attica should be closed and that they should all get counselors and just leave, let the murderers out in the street and let the therapy be done outside the prisons?
Yep, child predators, murderers, rapists, you name it. People that commit violent acts of crime should just be out in our communities. Communities Not Cages. Check it out. Google them. Communities Not Cages.
Senator, we have a call. So Rich in Buffalo. Rich, go ahead. Do you have a question for the senator?
Hi, Ralph. How are you?
I'm good.
Hey, listen, I did 13 years doing 25 to life in 8-hour shifts. That's what I told Governor Pataki. The 8 hours. So, but those ended in 98, and I moved on. But I don't want to call about the corrections, although I'm glad that you and the chair there are on it, and that Ralph is representing correction officers of. Of course, I support that. Things have changed so dramatically, even since '98, in terms of assaults and so on. But what I wanted to ask you, Senator. I had the good privilege of working with your predecessor, just President, when I coordinated the 4 Erie County towns when he had that for one. I think what it have been 10 years. He had Brant, North Collins, Evans, and Collins, and took him around and Rotary Club, etc. So I was happy to know him. And then the work when I worked in Albany briefly, and for Dick Kennedy, he was there as well during that time, and brings back, at the same time I scooted from introducing Just President in North Collins to an event somewhere, I don't know, Cheektowaga, because I was also coordinator of volunteers for Perry Duryea. So I'm really for governor. So I'm kind of dating myself. But why I called, George, is, I talked to you, the last time I guess we even talked was like you were on your cell, I was probably on a cell, and you were a county legislator. So I'm happy to finally connect with you.
Good to talk to you again.
I think I was councilman in North Council at that time. But why I call is really simple questions. One is, doesn't the Public Service Commission set the rates? And I know she appoints them, but is there any autonomy there, number one? And number two, and I'll get off, I'll listen offline here. I was always curious, I always follow the patterns of the people moving from seats and from one office to another, and kind of, a policy or political science wonk here a little bit. I want to ask you, because Andy Goodell was a county executive, went to the Assembly,
yes,
and you were county executive, went to the Senate, and I know it's a smaller county, but I'd like to hear, briefly why I think, maybe you could speak for him too. You felt that the state legislature would be more effective place, or than being the chief executive of your county, or how does that work out?
Sure.
Over down in the Gale?
Yeah.
How you doing?
Both good questions. First of all, just briefly on the, I certainly was proud to be county executive in Chautauqua County, representing about 125,000 residents. The state senate, it's a different job, right? But so much of what happened in Chautauqua County was negatively impacted by bad policy out of Albany. Most of our budget is gobbled up with unfunded state mandates. 50 cents of every property tax dollar collected in Chautauqua County went just to cover the local share of Medicaid. So I felt it was my mission to go to Albany to try to push back against these harmful laws and policies. And I would say Andy Goodell would probably say the same thing, that we could serve the greater good by speaking out and trying to change some of these harmful laws. And just to your first question on the Public Service Commission, you're absolutely right. That's who sets it. The governor appoints those people. Like I said, they unanimously approved these rate increases these double-digit rate increases, because they know that that's the cost of these radical climate policies here in New York State, and that's going to be borne on the backs of the ratepayers and the working class here in New York State, 100%.
We're here with the senator, and now we're going to move over to a number of bills that have been passed by the state legislature but have still not been signed. So tell me how that works, Senator. So the legislature has passed a number of bills. They sit on the governor's desk. How much time does she have?
So essentially, the legislature, the bills get to the governor's desk in a couple different ways. The governor can call for a particular bill, and then the clock starts ticking on how much time she has to sign that bill. Or the Senate and Assembly, the legislature, will send a bill to her desk, and again, the clock starts ticking. But technically, all bills, even those that have not been called for, that have been passed in the state legislature, have to be signed before the end of this year. And there are a number of very big, controversial bills that were passed in this last session, which ended in June, that are essentially sitting, waiting for the governor to sign or to veto. Or she can also do what's referred to as a pocket veto, where she
just do nothing.
Exactly, that's right.
And then it's vetoed.
That's right. And it's vetoed by default, essentially. So there's some big ones on her desk. One of the biggest ones is the medical aid in dying, also known as assisted suicide.
Now, this is a very controversial bill because there are people who have certainly been told that there are people out there suffering and they should have a legitimate way to die. I don't personally agree with it. I actually feel it is the slippery slope to help insurance companies avoid costs. And I've heard a number of lectures about this, the most important being that the main reason that people would choose assisted suicide is not because they're in pain. It's because they feel they're a burden on someone else.
Yeah.
So, those reasons, to me, don't justify allowing doctors to prescribe medication.
Well, yeah, and look, there's an argument to be made for this, but the bottom line is this. This bill in New York State did what the Democrats do all the time. They have to prove that they're more progressive.
Yes.
So this bill is wholly irresponsible because they had to prove that they were going further than any other state that has passed assisted suicide. So when you look at what could happen here potentially, you can't even look at states like Oregon, which passed assisted suicide, because our bill goes even further. Probably the most disturbing part about this is there is no chain of custody of these life-ending drugs. You're not required to have an in-person meeting with a physician. You can actually have these suicide drugs prescribed through a telemedicine visit.
Any two doctors.
Yes, that's right.
It could be a podiatrist.
Yeah.
Anybody.
So the guy that gives you Rogaine or Viagra can also end your life.
Yes.
It's disgusting what they have allowed to happen. So now picture this: you go in and you get these life-ending drugs at a pharmacy, and you leave. There's no chain of custody. No one is following you to know what happened to those drugs. And you go home and you're supposed to trust that the person is handling it properly, has taken it themselves. And many times in other states and other countries, these folks end up dying before they end up taking the medication. What happens to that medication? There's no responsibility for that. You could make the argument that if this was being done in a controlled environment, like at a hospice or at a hospital, under the supervision of a medical professional, I still disagree with it.
I disagree with it even then.
Yeah,
I've heard from people. There was a gentleman that lectured to us that was a New York State resident. He moves to Florida, a younger man, and he gets a terrible disease and terrible problem. And in Florida, they say there's no solution to it. In Florida, he could get medication to allow himself to end his life. But yet he comes back to New York. He wants to go to the hospital. Well, the operation is going to cost well over six figures money, or well over hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the insurance companies, obviously, they don't want to pay if they think there's a way out. He ends up suing. He ends up getting the coverage. He ends up going through the operation, and he ends up surviving. And he tells about there was a time based on, where I was, that I felt I should let myself go to benefit my family. But that's wrong. That was wrong. And his family wanted him. Now he's there. He survives. There's just such a slippery slope in this thing.
Well, first of all, let's be clear on one thing. When a doctor predicts how long a person has to live, because this bill calls for you have to have
6 months.
6 months, right? When a doctor gives that time frame, they're only right 20% of the time. 20%.
Right.
And how many people? We all know people that were given
Certainly.
months to live, and here years later they're still alive.
Right.
They've led a productive life. But I think one of the points you made is really critical. We all know people that are sitting around waiting for somebody to die so they can collect money, so they can inherit money. And you can't tell me that you're not going to have vulnerable people that are going to be influenced by come on, grandma, come on, dad, this is costing us a lot of money. Let's end it. And even though the bill says that insurance companies can't essentially offer that as a solution to caring for someone who needs a lot of expensive treatment, that's going to happen.
Well, again, these bills start one way.
That's right.
And then they get modified 1,000 different ways. It happened in Canada.
Yep.
It happens all over the country.
Well, so
would you say that the insurance companies are lobbying for this bill?
Well, of course they are, right? I mean, these are actuaries. These are bean counters that are looking at that is a certain percentage of people end their life prematurely. That's going to save them money. Because if you're at the end of life, you're probably sucking up a lot of resources. And it's just a horrible way to look at it. But there's no doubt in my mind that insurance companies are salivating to see this to be signed, because it is going to save them money. Also, I met recently with a group of self-advocates at a place called the Resource Center. These are people with developmental disabilities. And they brought it up. I didn't. They brought it up to me how frightened they were that this bill is going to be signed into law, and that they think it's horrible. And there's no question about it. You look at other countries like Canada, and there's no doubt that this has been used as a tool to reduce the number of people that have developmental disabilities in our society. It's really frightening, and it was frightening to these people that are themselves. I just heard a story about a father that's fighting the government in Canada for his adult son who has autism, who wants to end his life because he has autism. Autism is not a deadly disease, and you can also pretty much, if you stop taking medication, I don't care if you have high blood pressure, if you stop taking medication, eventually it becomes a deadly disease that would qualify you to end your own life.
What other kinds of legislation that is pending, George, is something that the people listening should be attentive to?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I think that one's a big one. But we also have a bill that passed to end the 100-foot rule in New York State. This is another attempt to shut down natural gas here.
Natural
in New York.
gas, right?
Exactly. So since 1986, utility companies, natural gas companies, have been required that if you are within 100 feet of their line, that they have to hook you up at no charge. This is a pro-consumer bill that has made sure that lots of people, particularly low-income people, are able to access natural gas as an affordable form. So this bill, Democrats passed to eliminate the 100-foot rule. So now, instead of getting it at no charge, it's going to cost you anywhere from $2,500 to $25,000 to have that natural gas line hooked up to your house. And when does the government ever tell a company to not give somebody something for free? That's the irony behind this,
because
right?
Again, this is all about being all electric and getting
yes.
rid of national or getting rid of
Natural gas.
Gas.
Yeah, and so that bill, this is sitting on the governor's desk also. Also, this big omnibus prison reform bill the Democrats passed, that they're going to reform the prison system, which is to make it worse.
But in the budget, they allowed up to three prisons to be closed, correct?
Right, and the governor is closing Bear Hill up in the North Country, and of course downsizing Collins. So
far she's only closed one.
Right.
So she can close two more.
She absolutely can, and this prison reform bill is going to essentially it's going to take that power away from the governor and put it in the hands of this activist group that Democrats appoint. It's basically a community prison system commission. They want to expand it and basically give this board, which is basically former inmates, pro criminal advocates. They want to give them the power to decide if a prison should be closed for quote unquote unsafe or unsanitary conditions. So this commission of corrections, made up of radical pro-criminal advocates, will have the ability, if the governor signs this bill, to bypass the executive branch and close prisons on their own. That's just absolutely devastating.
How many jobs are involved with these closures? Do you know?
Well, look, there's every prison has hundreds, if not thousands, of employees, depending on the size. When the corrections officers went on strike, I think it was 11,000 that were out. So then you add in the civilian employees that are in there, the healthcare professionals, the administration. It's tens of thousands of people. Again, this is not. It is certainly about the jobs because these prisons are located in rural areas, but it's also about the need for these prisons and the fact that we need to keep people off of our streets and behind bars. And we've seen the result: lower prison population, higher crime on our streets. That is
the correlation.
Exactly.
That's the clear correlation.
Absolutely. So go ahead.
Another bill that she's looking at is this bill that I personally feel is absolutely terrible, to make Erie County its own judicial district.
Yes.
Now, again, I understand that most people won't get this, but what they're trying to do is make Erie County its own district for electing Supreme Court judges. Right now, it's an 8-county system, and so the out-counties kind of counterbalance Erie County so that we can have both Republican and Democratic judges. If, in fact, this bill gets signed, because it's passed, if in fact this bill gets signed, then Erie County will only be able to elect Democratic judges. If you look at the history over the last several decades, Republicans don't win Erie County when they run for Supreme Court. The rule is you could lose Erie County by up to 30,000 votes and still win the 8-county race because of the balancing of the out-counties. And so we do have a balance of Republicans and Democrats. But once this bill comes into effect, then for the most part, you're only going to elect Democrats in a populated county that hears, unfortunately, a lot of the election law cases,
Yes.
which would then presumably the Democrats feel go their way.
Well, this is part of the Democrats' push to weaponize our judicial system here in New York State.
Exactly.
They've done it time and time again. And in fact, you referenced the election law. They passed a law that only allows you to bring a lawsuit regarding election law into certain, bright blue districts.
Right.
And
Like Erie.
Yeah, exactly. And the judicial district that we have right now, as you said, it's balanced. It provides so that we can have balance in our judicial system. Democrats can't win on the issues. They have to rig the system. All of these voting changes that they've made, so they would love it if people could just vote when they're standing in line at Walmart checking out socks or something. That's what they want because they can't win on the issues.
So we've got to take a hard break now. But, for example, the election law case, the Attorney General brought in Erie County, and that's part of what will happen when Erie County is all Democratic judges.
Amen.